Alright, and welcome back to the Prom With, and we're on the Off the Record. And before we dive in, just know, this week was loud. And not just in the headlines, it was loud in betrayal, loud in silence, and loud in the absolute gall of the people in charge. Let's start with the big, beautiful bill. It's got the kind of name that screams sarcasm, but unfortunately the consequences are real. Nobody read the full thing, nobody explained it, and somehow despite more initial no votes than yes, it magically passed after some late night arm twisting behind closed doors. And by arm twisting, I mean backroom deals and suspiciously timed campaign donations. This wasn't a bill about hope or justice. It was a bill about control and giving more money to the rich. About power, and it passed not because it earned the votes, but because it bought them. But let me be 100% clear. There's another thing going on that is called the Florida Swamp Detention Center, the Alligator Alcatraz. And this is a separate issue. Totally different funding, different timeline, different level of dystopia, right? There's some people thinking that the big beautiful bill was the one funding it, but no, it was not. And this wasn't part of a federal bill. It wasn't approved by Congress, and this nightmare was cooked up entirely by Florida Republicans' leadership. Of course it is, because why not? And it took them 8 days to build it. That's all it took. 8 days to build a military-style detention center in the middle of the Everglades. And using state-level disaster relief funds. You know, the money that helps people after a hurricane, And it was also money that was supposed to help for school repairs, public health. Instead, nope, it got funneled into fencing and floodlights and holding cells. And while FEMA and DHS have both said they didn't authorize this, Florida's already planning to request federal reimbursement. So it's not federally funded yet. But if the Trump administration doesn't shut down immediately, then we're all complicit. Because we're talking about the state-run concentration camp. One that didn't go through Congress, didn't ask for public input, and definitely didn't care about human rights. And now it's up and running. And what is the media doing? Let's check on some of the progressive voices. Oh right, they're busy silencing their own audiences. You bring up the fact that Democrats voted for a shady federal bill, or you suggest maybe we should primary the people who voted for it. And suddenly you're the problem. Suddenly it is, why don't you run for office? Or stop whining and trust the process. Trust the process? Bro, the process gave us a swamp prison and a corporate giveaway in the same week. We're not dealing with the bad actors. We're dealing with bad faith. From politicians, from governors, and from some of our own so-called allies in the media. Here's the thing. If you're more comfortable lecturing your audience than challenging the people in power, you already picked their side. Yeah, I'm pissed about this, but I'm not surprised. We saw this bill was going to pass from a mile down. Because we've seen this before. And if we don't call it out clearly, loudly, and relentlessly, then it's going to keep happening. So no, the big beautiful bill didn't fund Alligator Alcatraz like some people might think. But both stories show the same truth. Power protects power. And he doesn't care about the rest of us. And today we're breaking it down. The bill, the swamp, and the media cowardice that made it all possible. We're starting now.
Tonight, a major victory for the Donald Trump agenda.
The motion is adopted.
The House passing his multi-trillion-dollar sprawling spending bill designed to fund a wide range of campaign promises, including extending tax cuts passed in his first administration, new military spending, and money to fund a mass deportation plan, paying for it in part with steep cuts to food aid benefits, clean energy funding, and Medicaid. President Trump celebrating the win before flying to a victory rally in Iowa.
This is a great bill. This is going to be a great bill for the country.
The bill passed largely on party lines, with only 2 Republicans voting against it. One of those, Pennsylvania Representative Brian Fitzpatrick, who dodged NBC News' questions.
Why did you vote no?
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you? Why did you vote no?
House conservatives balked at the changes made in the Senate, holding back their votes for hours. before they finally relented without a single thing in the bill changing. House Speaker Mike Johnson.
You think they caved?
No, I don't think they caved. Look, I think every member made a thoughtful and informed decision.
President Trump working the phones until the early morning hours. The holdouts say they got what they wanted.
Are you concerned that in the future, though, people won't believe that you guys are going to be a no on big issues like this?
No, I think they know we better be ready they better be ready to deal.
Democrats did everything they could to delay final passage. Their leader, Hakeem Jeffries, setting a record by holding the floor for more than 8 hours, attacking the bill's overhaul of social safety net programs like Medicaid and SNAP, which could lead to millions of Americans losing access to coverage.
We were a hell no last week, a hell no this week, a hell no yesterday, a hell no today.
But Republicans argue Medicaid is in need of reform, and the bill is filled with the president's priorities, like eliminating taxes on tips and overtime.
And Ryan, as you know, President Trump still needs to sign this bill. What's the plan for that?
Tom, the president has an elaborate bill signing ceremony set for the 4th of July, complete with the possibility of a B-2 bomber flyover and fireworks. All this as he attempts to sell this package to the country. Tom?
All right, Ryan, we thank you for that. We thank you for watching. And remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.
So it happened. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act, all 900 pages of it, it officially passed Congress today. Amazing. Despite protests, despite warnings, despite public opposition, and a record-breaking 9-hour filibuster from Hakeem Jeffries, it's done. Let's start with how it went there. And the Senate passed it by a 51-50 on July 1st, with the Vice President casting the tie-breaking vote. And today, on July 3rd, the House approved it in one last time and sent it down to Pennsylvania Avenue for a signature. And folks, this is one of the most devastating economic decisions of our generation. Not because of what it claims to fix, but because of who it actually was written for. So what's in this big, beautiful bill? Let's just lay it out. They call it beautiful, but let me read you what it actually inside this thing. Okay, so it cements $4.5 trillion in Trump-era tax cuts permanently. If we remember this, it only benefited the top 10%, so wealthy people. It eliminates federal taxes on tips and overtime. Everybody's like, oh, that looks great. You'll see why this is not good. And it adds a new $2,500 child tax credit. It introduces something called the Trump account for newborn savings. That's another one. And it also raises the SALT caps, a gift high-income earners in high-tax states. And it pumps $350 billion into military and border enforcement. So ICE is going to get more money than other countries' militaries. Now, if you're thinking, oh, cool, that sounds like they're cutting us all a break with a tax credit and no tax on tips and all that stuff, we'll stop you right there. Because while this looks shiny on paper, it's paid for by cutting the backbone of working class supports in America. Let me break this down. $1.2 trillion cut from Medicaid. That means stricter work requirements, more eligibility checks, and potentially up to 17 million people losing access to care. Then we go to SNAP benefits, aka food stamps. They have been slashed. And the cost of managing them, that's now being dumped onto the states. And then the funding for housing programs, disability services, and rural clinics also cut. So if you live in a small town with only one clinic and that gets closed down, thank this bill, because now you will have to drive an hour, 2 hours to get a checkup. Now, you feeling that yet? Because the IRS says the top 20% earners will walk away with over 85% of the benefit from these tax cuts. But if you're on a fixed income or working minimum wage, you may get a few dollars on your check while watching your hospital shut down. And here's the political math. They barely got this thing through. The first House vote in May failed, 215 to 214 with one present vote. So what changed? Well, Trump got on the phone. He called lawmakers directly. Deals were made behind closed doors. The holdouts, people like Tim Burchett and Chip Roy, flipped their votes after they were promised higher SALT deductions and campaign boosts. And just like that, the bill scrapped through, 218 to 214. All Republicans voted yes. All Democrats voted no. There was only 2 Republicans who voted no. And the Senate followed suit July 1st, 5150, and now today the final seal was stamped, and what was once French wish list for billionaires just became a federal law. Now let's keep it real. The bill isn't some bipartisan compromise. It's a laser-guided missile aimed at the working class. We can break it down. So the policy, tax cuts. Who wins? Tough 5% of the corporations. Who loses? Low-income workers. They see little or no benefit. Next policy, social program cuts. Who wins? Deficit hogs. Wealthy taxpayers indirectly. Who loses? Rural poor, elderly, and disabled. Policy, military or slash funding. Who wins? Defense contractors, security firms. Who loses? Everyone else, due to spending trade-offs. Now, the next one, last one, policy is the national debt explosion. Who wins? The rich. The debt hedges, investments. And who loses? Future taxpayers, small businesses. We're talking about 830,000 potential job losses, according to analysts. Thousands of hospital closures in rural areas. An estimate of 51,000 preventable deaths per year from lost Medicaid coverage. And somehow they're still calling this a victory for American families. So why does this matter? Because we enter a new phase. This wasn't just a bill. It was a stress test for democracy, and Congress failed. This was the test of whether billionaires and corporations can rewrite the tax code and gut the safety net with zero accountability. And they just did. And the silence, it's deafening. Because you think this will be front page news across the country. It has been, but not in the way you think it should be. But no, it's like, what did most media outlets focus on? Oh, like the clickbait headlines. Democrats furious after GOP victory. Trump's comeback bill passes House. And some left-wing streamers, they spend more time yelling at their audiences than at the politicians who voted yes. One even said, and I quote, then you go primary them, motherfucker. As if wanting accountability is some annoyance. No, miss me with that defeatism. If the people you put your faith in don't hold the powerful accountable, then what are they even doing on the mic? So here's the bottom line. Here's the reality. This is not a populist win. It's a wealth hoarding bill disguised as a tax relief plan. They traded $1.2 trillion in healthcare and food aid for a permanent tax break to millionaires and private military contractors. And the national debt, here it comes back. Now it's going to, this passed, and this was the party of the financial responsible people. They are adding $3.3 to $4 trillion on our national debt over the next decade. Fiscal responsibility, my ass. But don't worry, your tips are tax-free now. Yay. Let's not demand fair wages. Let's just tips are tax-free now. Yay. You just might not have a hospital to go if you get sick now. If we got to start asking harder questions, like, how did this pass when most Americans didn't want it? Why is it always our kids, our clinics, our cares that gets a cut, where military budgets and billionaires' deductions get upgraded? We know the answer at this point, but it's corruption. And what are we going to do? Not in November. I hate this. This like, oh, the midterms, guys. By then, there's going to be way more damage done. What are we doing right now? Right now, at this moment. When 17 million people start getting letters that they lost coverage. This is a moment of reckoning. Because if you're working class, immigrant, disabled, parent, teacher, veteran, etc., this bill is a direct attack on your future. And if you're not angry yet, read it again. The big, beautiful bill passed today. And it's going to be hell to live under. I just don't like this. It's like, wait until the primaries. We're gonna get them. We've been saying this for so long. And I heard that there's gonna be protests tomorrow on July 4th. Guys, I hope these protests actually work out this time. But again, like I said about my No Kings protest, you can't have a protest on your day off for 2 hours with little ice creams and everything and go, no kings, no kings, but not having an actual message. You either protest and shut this shit down and make everything very uncomfortable, or we're gonna keep seeing this. And especially the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party are not innocent in this. Hakeem Jeffries just doing a filibuster for 9 hours, it doesn't fix anything. Because he allowed this. Chuck Schumer, same thing. Cory Booker, all these establishment Democrats, they allowed this to happen. Just because you voted no doesn't mean that you were fighting back. They didn't do a blitzkrieg attack on the media to make sure that we got the message out that this was a bad bill. Because the Republican Party did an amazing job at the message. Even though this was one of the most unpopular bills in history, it still passed. And you know what's going to happen to these people who voted yes? Nothing. Crickets. Because they still hold power. So you might go out there, protest tomorrow and say, oh, I'm not happy with my government. Cool. I mean, act all angry you want, but they still have power. Like, what are you gonna do? And why? And I mean legally. How are we gonna protest these people? How are we gonna make everything more comfortable? How are we gonna impeach them? You can't just be all talk. Anyways, after the break, we'll talk about the Florida alligator Alcatraz and how the same cruelty that gutted this budget is now building concentration camps with taxpayer money. Because this is just bad governance. It's a big fat warning. Stick with me.
Developing this evening, state lawmakers say they were shut out of the controversial new detention center deep in the Everglades.
This comes just hours after the first group of detainees arrived at the facility being called Alligator Alcatraz. Local 10's Glenna Milberg is live near Ochopee with what those lawmakers are telling us after being denied entry. Glenna.
You know, it's really no secret that the Democrats in this state are opposed to all of this. But those lawmakers do have a statutory right to show up unannounced and inspect any state run of these kinds of facilities. And the fact that they were denied that only amped up the tensions.
As I'm sure you're aware, the statute says that we are able to have access to any facility.
State lawmakers came to verify firsthand.
Schedule a time next week.
There's no time.
Request denied.
My colleagues on both sides of the aisle, they would want us to be here to ensure that this state-run facility is being done in a way that shows that is in a most humane way.
Buses bringing detainees came and went. The first group arriving overnight, that photo posted on state social media.
It's so essential when you have hundreds of millions of public dollars being spent on a political stunt that we have the ability to see for our own eyes what is happening.
To verify the state's plan for mass housing. Importing water, exporting waste, safety, security. That the leaks from pre-opening are sealed against the coming weather, that legal services are available, as the state promises. This immigration attorney stopped to learn and was turned away.
They kindly told me that there had been none of that set up yet for visitation hours for attorneys, nowhere where I could contact.
Alligator Alcatraz is now on the official signage and a tourist attraction, even as a roster of opposition in new letters and an environmental lawsuit asks for a halt. We were wondering earlier why even more fencing was being brought in, and now we see they are fencing off the entire front. They are putting a big gate right on Alligator Alley to close off Alligator Alcatraz. One really interesting thing in one of the court filings today from the Department of Homeland Security, they in their filing call this a total state operation. State is in charge, state paid for, and they say that the almost $500 million that the state thinks it will be reimbursed by FEMA is not even a thing at all at this point. I'm Glenna Milberg, live in front of Alligator Alcatraz tonight, Local 10 News.
Well, that is shocking to hear. Thank you, Glenna. And be sure to watch This Week in South Florida this Sunday morning at 11:30 as Local 10's Glenna Milberg is joined by State Senator Chev.
So, let's talk about Florida. Yes, I know. Again, I know. You would think I live in Florida with the amount of times I talk about it, but you know, there's a good reason why. Because today, while the nation was watching Congress pass the so-called big, beautiful bill, Florida was doing something just as sinister, just with a little less attention. They're building a camp. Not a shelter, not a temporary holding facility, a literal concentration camp, where they're calling it the Alligator Alcatraz. Isn't a nickname someone made up online. It's how local law enforcement and some conservative politicians are literally describing it. A militarized compound surrounded by swamp, alligators, and barbed wire, where immigrants and detainees will be held out of sight, out of reach. And let me be blunt, what this is. It's a concentration camp. Yeah, I said it. And let me paint a picture for you. Right now in Glades County, Florida, one of the poorest counties in the state, the DeSantis administration just allocated tens of millions in new funding to retrofit and expand an already existing detention facility. But the expansion is not about improving conditions. It's about detaining more people for longer without trial and with fewer public records and even fewer regulations. The walls are reinforced, surveillance double, guards armed like they're in the war zone. And water quality and living conditions very unsafe, according to multiple human rights watchdogs. And yet this site has got $60 million budget increase, with $20 million diverted from state social programs, including housing grants and mental health services, all funded by your tax dollars. Good job, Republicans. And what's their official line? Here's what the officials are claiming. Here's what they say. It's just a processing center. We're keeping Florida safe. These are the criminals and in threats. But none of that holds up, because in the past year, over 72% of those held in Florida ICE detentions had no criminal record. None. And their crime, quote unquote, they were being undocumented or being brown and not carrying ID fast enough. That's it. And even those with prior infractions, most were for non-violent immigration-related offenses, like missing a court date because the notice came late, or while they spit in, and while they spit it as necessary. This new facility was explicitly designed to be isolated. Lawyers can't easily visit. Families can't just walk up. Press access is blocked. That's not reform. That's not justice. It's intentional disappearance. So let's just say it plainly. When you take a marginalized group of people, round them up based on who they are, not what they did, and cage them in a high security facility designed to be unreachable. Here's a secret. That's a concentration camp. The one that we learned in freaking history. And I know the word makes people uncomfortable. Good, because it is. It should be. Because it's supposed to. Because we got to stop playing the game where only Europe in the 1940s qualifies as fascist, and everything America does is just tough on crime. No. We are criminalizing survival. We're disappearing the poor under the guise of border control. And we're going and doing it on land patrol by gators and drones. Because welcome to Alligator Alcatraz. And this is dangerous. Let's talk the danger, not just for immigrants, but for all of us. The facility opens doors for 1. Indefinite detention. With murky legal status, people can be held for months, even years, without trial. 2. Suspended due process. Legal aid groups say access is near impossible. Families can't locate loved ones. 3. Privatized contracts. The new wing is operated by private prison contractors, the same ones that's been sued over 150 times for abuse, neglect, and wrongful death. 4. Expansion of precedent. If Florida gets away with this, other states will copy it. In fact, Texas is already building a similar compound near the Rio Grande with no plan for judicial review. This isn't just about immigration, guys. Come on. It's about what happens when government realizes that it can jail anyone it wants, as long as it controls the language. Because once undocumented immigrant becomes synonymous with enemy, what's stopping them from moving to the other groups? Black protesters, teachers who refuse to censor their curriculums, journalists, you? That sounds like terrible right there. It sounds horrendous. Like, that's how they frame it on the news, though. The language, illegal immigrants, emergency. Not to mention of who's detained. No questions about conditions, no interviews with families, just a narrative, just fear. Let's talk about the historical parallels about this. Let me take you back. Remember the Japanese, of course you don't, but you guys heard this on history. Japanese internment camps in World War II? They were authorized by executive order, framed as protective custody. And then many ways until now we've realized how wrong that was. Then we go to Guantanamo Bay, still open, still holding people without trial, and still defending as necessary. The place where many people have been tortured. And then we have the Jim Crow chain gangs, run through prisons, sold as public safety, end up as forced labor. Now Florida is doing it again, but with better marketing and swamp animals as PR cover. This isn't new, it's just rebranded. And where's the outrage? Here's the thing that eats me. This is happening right now. There's no mass protests, no national outrage, barely a headline on MSNBC, just silence. And if you do speak up, some liberal influencers will accuse you for being too dramatic. Don't compare this to the Holocaust. Stop exaggerating. We have to wait for the facts. But here's the facts. Human rights lawyers have been blocked from entering. Family members can't locate detained relatives. ICE is refusing to release intake data. What else do you need? Because let me be real with you. I don't want to live in a country where we have to argue about what counts as a camp. If you're caging human beings in isolated compounds, stripping them of legal access and normalizing indefinite detention, it's a concentration camp. If you're surrounded with gators and guns to prevent escape, it's a concentration camp. And if you're doing all that and calling it protection, well, you are a racist propagandist. Now, this is what we know so far. The Alligator Alcatraz facility opens September 1st. And it could have been opened sooner, actually. And it's funded by reallocated Florida state budget money and matching federal funds made available by the Emergency Border Authorization in the Big Beautiful Bill. It will have capacity of 1,500 detainees. Actually, it expanded to 5,000. Private contractors run the daily operations. Oversight? No, none. Medical care? Minimal. Trial access? Still being reviewed. So what happens when something goes wrong? When someone dies? What happens when this becomes the new normal? It's like, this is going to be bad. And listen, we don't need to wait 50 years for the documentaries. We don't need hindsight, because you know what this is. We know what happens when the state decides some people aren't real citizens. We know what happens when profit gets tied to imprisonment. We know what happens when silence becomes policy. This camp isn't about security. It's about erasure. And if we don't fight it now, like, not just wait until something bad happens. Now, we need now. It's like we're going to wake up one day and realize the swamp swallow all of us. And this is a moment, not just for immigrants, for everyone. If they can do this to the most vulnerable with gators, guns, and no trial, they can do it to anyone. So don't look away. Don't soften the language. Don't wait for permission to be outraged. Call it what it is. A camp, a crime in a crisis. And one more reason we need to keep fighting.
Maryland man deported to El Salvador making national headlines is sharing new details about his time in jail.
And it all stems from that 2022 traffic stop that was in Putnam County, where he was accused of human smuggling. Let's go live to Peyton Kennedy this morning. She joins us in Nashville. Peyton, you have the details on this.
Yes, and Kilmar Abrego Garcia says that he was beaten and psychologically tortured while in that El Salvador prison. This is according to new court documents that were just filed. Abrego Garcia says that he was kicked and hit so often he had visible bruises and lumps all over his body. He says he was sleep deprived as he and 20 others were forced to kneel all night. He says guards hit anyone who fell. He says they were confined to metal bunks, no mattresses, in an overcrowded cell with no windows and 24/7 bright lights. Abrego Garcia says he lost more than 30 pounds. A federal judge in Tennessee has ruled that Abrego Garcia is eligible for release under certain conditions as he awaits trial on the criminal charges in the state. She has kept him in jail, though, for now, at the request of his own attorneys. Those attorneys say they came to this decision because, quote, we cannot put any faith in any representation made on this issue by the Justice Department. The irony of this request is not lost on anyone. And Abrego Garcia continues to plead not guilty to his charges. Live in Nashville, Peyton Kennedy, News 2.
Okay. If you're still with me after the first two segments, you know the kind of week we had. And now I need to talk about something that isn't just political, but it's personal. It's a human right issue. And it should make every single one of us more uncomfortable and angry every day. Because this is the story of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a name that maybe you have heard it, but most Americans still haven't heard. And if they have heard very, very misinformed about him. But we should know it, because what happens to him wasn't an accident. It's the blueprint of what the Trump administration wants to do. So let's start from the top. Who's Abrego Garcia? Okay, so Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia is a 29-year-old Salvadorian man who had been living in Maryland. He's got a family here. He had a legal representation. And more importantly, he had a 2019 federal court order protecting him from deportation. Why? Because back in 2019, a judge agreed that returning him to El Salvador could get him killed. He had a credible fear of persecution. And under U.S. asylum law, that's supposed to matter. But on March 15, 2025, DHS deported him anyway. No court hearing, no warning. Just gone. Now listen, we've seen wrongful deportations before. We've seen people sent away despite orders, despite pleas. But this case, it felt different. It was different. Because instead of being dropped off at the airport with a good luck, Abrego Garcia was immediately detained at CCOT, El Salvador's maximum security prison. The one they proudly call a mega prison. Now let me describe this place. CCOT, mega prison, or modern dungeon. I think it's a torture place. So CCOT stands for Centro de Confinamiento del Terrorismo. It's a crown jewel of President Bukele's war on gangs. A giant concrete fortress in the middle of nowhere, holding over 40,000 detainees. Most of them, they never had a trial. And once you're in there, no sunlight, no windows, no beds, no phone calls, no due process. Just surveillance, bright lights, and brutality. And then that's where the U.S. sent him, even though we knew it violated international law, even though the courts say not to. And even the Trump administration admitted that they made a mistake of deporting him. So what happened to him inside? This came from his own words. In the new legal filing and interview, Kilmar described what he lived through, and let me quote him directly. And I quote, "They kicked me. They beat me with sticks. They made me kneel all night. If anyone collapsed, they beat us all again." He said he lost over 30 pounds in 2 weeks, was forced to stand on knees without rest, under constant lights with no clean water, no showers, and no contact with his family or lawyer. Now, if you are like saying, well, they just made him kneel all night. No. These are stress positions. I want you to think that's a torture method used against terrorists for torture to interrogations. That's what they did to him. And they are forbidden by the Geneva Convention because they are definition of torture. And then let's keep going. When he begged for a phone call, they laughed at him. When he asked what he was charged with, they told him, "Your government sent you here." They let that sink in. They said, "Your government sent you here." Now, Salvadoran officials, including the President Nayib Bukele, have denied the claims. Of course they have. To save face, they released photos showing him upright. Okay, fine. They call it propaganda. They say he's just trying to game the system. And DHS, they called it a sob story from an MS-13 member. Even Trump said this to try to spin the mistake. He said his tattoos were MS-13 member thing, and it was not. It was gang professionals who study the gang violence and the gang culture in America and MS-13. They even said that he was never affiliated with this. Like, there's a problem with this narrative. Like, there's no proof he affiliated with any gang. None. And in fact, Kilmer has never been convicted of any violent crime. His immigration case is about smuggling. His immigration case is about smuggling. Not gangs, not drunks, no weapons. Just being undocumented and getting caught trying to help someone else cross the border. That's what they're saying, smuggling. They trying to make the word smuggling sound like he was trying to get like what is it called? Sex trafficking. No. He crossed the border and he was helping someone else cross the border with himself. And you know who else has a smuggling charge on their record? Cuban refugees, Venezuelan descendants, Ukrainian asylum seekers. It doesn't mean you deserve to be beaten, starved, and disappear. And let's talk about what this means legally. He was deported in violation of a court order. He was detained without charge in a foreign country with U.S. cooperation. He was denied legal counsel and nobody told his family where he was for weeks. That's called a forced disappearance under international law, and it's not supposed to happen in democracies. So how did he get back? This is the part that's wild, guys. After international outcry, a group of lawmakers led by Senator Chris Van Hollen, they flew to El Salvador. They met with Bukele. They saw Kilmer in person, and they documented the conditions with photos, videos, and a full report. The U.S. Supreme Court then issued a directive requiring his return. And on June 6, Kilmer Abrego Garcia came back. But not as a free man. He's now being held in Tennessee, facing human smuggling charges and awaiting trial. But here's the key detail, because of what happened. He's not legally protected for being deported back to El Salvador under the UN Convention Against Torture. You know how bad it has to get for that to apply? Bad. Like, really bad. Now let's zoom out. What happens to Kilmer isn't just one bureaucratic error. It's a canary in the coal mine. It shows what happens when immigration policy is used as punishment, or courts get ignored, or foreign cooperation becomes a cover for offloading people in torture sites. And here's what chills me. CCOT is funded by the US resources. Your tax dollars are paying for this. Our government trains Salvadorian officers. We share intel with their prison system. So when we deport people like Kilmer, we're not just saying letting another country handle it. We're handing them over to our partners who then disappear them. Let me ask you something. What if this was you? What if I showed up, ignored your court file, and sent you away? What if you landed in a prison surrounded by machine guns and street searches and no one knew where you were? Let me tell you, if this man would have been a guy named John Smith, white, and they did this, there would have been such an outrage. But of course, he's a brown man, immigrant, you know, the usual story. No, if they were done, if we call this justice, we would call it a democracy? No. We can't pretend this is a fluke, guys. This is now becoming the thing. And not when it took a senator, a Supreme Court ruling, and a global average to bring one person home. And not when hundreds of others have not come back. He's the only one so far that we know who was that was able to come back, because he was a big media scream about this man. But there was over 200 other immigrants just like him. So here's the message of the Department of Homeland Security to President Trump, to anyone still pretending this system is humane. You knew, you saw the orders, you saw the warning signs, you knew what the prison was, and you sent him anyway. That's not immigration enforcement, that's complicity, it's racism. And if we don't fix this now, it's not just about Abrego Garcia of the worlds who disappear. It will be all of us.
Everyday Americans with disabilities will be hurt. Hospitals will close, nursing homes will shut down, and community-based health clinics will be unable to provide services. This dangerous and extreme Republican budget will result in Americans losing their lives because of the inability to access health care coverage. It's unacceptable, unconscionable, and un-American. Shame on Senate Republicans for passing this disgusting abomination, and shame on House Republicans for continuing to bend the knee to Donald Trump's extreme agenda. This one big ugly bill represents the largest cut to nutritional assistance in American history. Extreme MAGA Republicans are literally ripping food out of the mouths of children, veterans, and seniors, and all of this is being done to provide massive tax breaks to their billionaire donors. Republicans claim to be the party of working class Americans. You are not. You are hurting working class Americans. This bill won't make life more affordable for the American people. It will make life more expensive, including dramatically raising energy costs, which are already too high.
All right, so let's talk about the part of the week that really pissed me off. Because as bad as the headlines were, as devastating as the big beautiful bill is, as horrifying as Alligator Alcatraz and the Abrego Garcia cases are, what frustrated me just as much, it was the silence. Or worse, the cop-out coverage from people who should know better. I'm talking about the left-wing media, the progressive streamers, the YouTubers, the I care so much about democracy content creator who pop up after every court hearing to deliver the same freaking script. This is really bad day for Donald Trump. The walls are closing in. Another fatal blow from the courts. Trump might not survive this one. And then, 2 weeks later, he's back at it again. Stronger than ever. Polls are higher. Fundraising better, and signing off on legislation like he's the biggest dictator in our life. We've been hearing that since 2016. Hell, since the Access Hollywood tape. They keep saying, this will end him. No one could survive this. It's over. It was never over, because these headlines are therapy, not strategy. They're designed to make you feel like something's being done, even when nothing's changing. And let's be honest, what's the left-wing media, especially the left-wing media, especially the influencer class, has mastered in the art of empty win. Instead of organizing, they report vibes. Instead of explaining how power works, they go viral by dunking on some Republican spelling mistake. And when the Supreme Court hands down a decision that makes Trump functionally immune to prosecution, what's the reaction? This is a bad day for democracy. That dark day at the courts. The precedent is terrifying. Okay, now, but then what? The right wing doesn't play like that. Fox News doesn't post bad day for conservatives when they lose. They regroup, they double down, they turn loss into fuel. But on our side, we light a candle, tweet #resist, and then go back up to streaming true crime videos until the next bad headline drops. And then we're shocked when nothing improves. And let me tell you what happens when you frame every loss as a win. You make people delusional. You tell your audience that justice is always right around the corner, when really the system is sprinting into the other direction. People stop preparing for impact because they think the courts or Jack Smith or Merrick Garland or the Supreme Court is going to save us. And then the day Trump wins the nomination, when he decides to go for his third term, or gosh forbid, those same creators are going to go live and say, we didn't expect this. I'm shaking. How could this happen? It happened because you lied to your audience. Not with malice, but with false hope. Remember the Kamala Harris presidential race? Everybody's like, oh, look at this. All these stadiums are full. People are outside and Trump's arenas are empty. There's no way he can win. But poll after poll after poll after poll was saying he is winning no matter what, or Kamala Harris has a chance to win. And didn't we learn our lesson in 2016? And people got complacent, or they just didn't want a woman president, because that's the biggest other possibility. But it's like, let me be fair though. There are some creators doing good work. There are journalists out there holding the line. But the big platforms, the viral ones, they keep telling to just vote blue and chill. But what happens after you vote? Because right now we got a we have a Senate leadership that is not, gosh, what is the word? I'm like, it's besides coward, whatever. We don't have nothing. When Republicans were in the minority under Obama, do you know how many bills was Obama able to pass? Not many. Why? Because they were good at blocking. What are we good at? Nothing. The Democratic leadership right now is like, oh, how dare you, Trump, do this? This is bad for democracy. And then vote for and approve whatever Trump says. It's like, gosh, I don't know. And we just watched the Republican control Congress pass the largest wealth transfer bill in decades. And then while Florida builds concentration camps, Supreme Court gives Trump the get out of jail free card. So yeah, tell me again how this is a blow to him. Every time. Here's the pattern. Trump does something illegal or vile. Left-wing media goes, it's over for him. Nothing happens. People tune out. Repeat. And it feels good to hope. But we can't be confusing analysis with optimism. Trump is not losing. He's winning all the time. He's shaping the courts, the economy, the political narrative, even when he's out of office. So if the media keeps pretending it's all falling apart for him, they're not reporting. They are sleepwalking. And what's worse, some of these influencers mock their audience for pushing back. It's like you say, hey, maybe we should primary the Democrats who just voted for the big, beautiful bill, or the ones who are not helping. And then they say, then you go primary them, motherfucker. That actually happened. A left-wing streamer, big platform, millions of viewers, instead of encouraging political engagement, mocked their own supporters for demanding accountability. That's not leadership. That's ego. If we tell people the only role they have is to watch, to consume, to like and share, but never organize, never challenge, never question, then we're just building the left-wing version of Fox News. Not even that. Fox News mobilizes somehow. We don't need more bad day for democracy post. We need explainers about what power actually looks like. Calls to action, not just reaction. Accountability for Democrats when they screw us. Real strategy, not aesthetic politics. And we need media that respects people enough to tell the truth even when it's hard. MSNBC bent the knee. CVS bent the knee. ABC bent the knee. Because we are out of time for therapy content. We need movement media. I'm not trying to drag anyone just to drag them. But if your platform is built on saving democracy, you can't treat your audience like passive spectators. We don't need narrators. We need fighters. Let me leave you with this. What if this isn't dysfunction? What if this isn't incompetence? What if the reason Trump keeps winning these awful things is because both sides secretly need him to? The right needs him to rally their base. The left needs him to raise money. And the media, they need him to stay relevant. So the game becomes pretending we're always one day away from the big collapse, while quietly leaning to life with fascism. It's not politics, it's performance art. It's killing us.
The degree to which Trump on the ballot will inspire Democrats to come out and vote in record numbers to make sure that the multi-indicted former president doesn't become president again should not be understated. I believe that if Trump is the Republican nominee, you may see historic record turnout as a percentage of the electorate for Democrats. I believe it may be like something we have not seen in decades in the United States. If Trump has 3, 4, 5 cases against him and the polling seems close, with a likely voter model in October of 2024, I believe that Democrats will see that and they will say, oh, hell no. No, not again, not this time. And that you will see explosive turnout from Democrats.
Let me wrap out all of this, because it's been a week. I feel like every time I do an episode of this, it just feels like every week is just getting worse and worse and worse and worse. The hotter the temperature, the worse the news are. Anyways, the big beautiful bill passed. A swamp prison is opening in Florida with deported men to be tortured in the U.S. back cell. And the people who are supposed to sound the alarm, they're still tweeting, "Bad day for America," and calling it journalism. We're not just in crisis. We're in collapse. And everyone with a microphone, a camera, and a platform is acting like this is still a debate club. But let me ask you something real simple. If you got 1 to 2 million followers, if you got sponsors, streams, super chats, Patreon money coming in, if you're going live 5 days a week talking about the fall of democracy, why the hell you're not outside Congress? Why aren't you putting the pressure? You want to know what pressure looks like? Let me give you an example. It looks like Jon Stewart standing on the Capitol steps. Back in 2022, he didn't just make a viral video. He didn't just tweet a thread. He showed up again and again. And not just for a press hit. He sat in those hallways with veterans for days. And he follows senators into elevators. He shamed them on camera. He broke it down on cable news and in person. And what happened? They passed the PACT Act. A bill that has been stalled for years suddenly became a priority because he made it impossible to ignore. He used his influence not just to make noise, but to apply direct pressure. Same thing he did for the 9/11 first responders when the Congress was about to cut their benefits. So you're telling me that he's been doing this constantly. And then Jon Stewart understood something most of these political YouTubers don't. The job isn't to sound smart. The job is to make it harder for power to say no. That means name the politicians who stall in your bill. Show up to their office, put a camera in their face, flood their staff lines with calls. Because when we don't do that, when we just react on camera for views, we become part of the system we're supposedly criticizing. I said it earlier and I'll say it again. Most of the left-wing media has given us therapy, not strategy. And I get it. We're all tired. We're all overwhelmed. But damn, man, we can't afford to keep talking about power like we don't have any. Because we do. Some of these creators have bigger audiences than CNN on a Tuesday night. They can raise millions for a streamer apology video, but they can't rally 500 people to go to the Capitol Hill? Come on. If Jon Stewart, a 60-year-old comedian with no podcast, well, now he does, no Twitch stream, no monetization model, could force Congress to act, what's stopping everyone else? Now, I know he is famous in a sense, but he was not like what current political YouTubers and all that are. These people have an influence as well. And here's the problem. We built a political culture where having the right take feels like the goal. Not action, not organization, just takes. We obsess over what Trump posted, or what Biden forgot, oh gosh, or what some liberal arts major said on TikTok. Meanwhile, the border is militarized, public education's been stripped, trans people are under legal attack, healthcare is still unaffordable, and yes, torture is happening in places funded by the United States money. And in the left's response, we'll cover it on the podcast. We'll do a reaction stream. We'll drop a YouTube essay. Cool. But when we're going to knock on some doors, when are we going to show up to Senate hearings? When are we going to organize like our lives depend on it? Because for millions of people, they do. Let me tell you something about Jon Stewart that I respect deeply. He didn't have to do any of that. He could have stayed rich, made a few jokes, dropped a clip, and gone back to his farm. But he showed up. He cared. He used his face, his voice, and his power. And he did it for the people who don't have podcasts, who don't have super chats, who don't get invited to panels, who don't get views for their suffering. He did it for veterans dying from burn pit exposure while Congress dragged their feet. And because he showed up, they had to act. That's what real influence looks like. So here's where I'll leave it tonight. If you have influence, use it. If you have a platform, weaponize it. If you have followers, aim them. We're in a moment of collapse, and collapse is not the time for passive observation. It's the time for disruption. We need fewer watch me talk about politics show, and more watch me confront this congressman energy, because that's how things change. Not from takes, not from clips, but from confrontation. Like show up, speak loud, get personal, make it uncomfortable. And if you can't do that, then maybe don't claim to be a political influencer. Because Jon Stewart set the bar. And we're not clearing it. And you think it's like, well, what aren't you doing? Listen, I've been actually more involved in my city in the past year than I have ever been in my life. The amount of council meetings I watch and I put my opinion, the amount of phone calls and the amount of times I've been in front of politicians to make them uncomfortable. And have they change? No. Guess what? I'm in a very ruby red state. Does that mean that I stopped? No. Do I have millions of followers? No. I wish I did, but it will get there. However, if you're a left-wing influencer and streamer and all that, stop putting these dumb podcasts about like, oh, America's a down. Start acting. You know where they're at. Go make them uncomfortable. Pressure them. Make them answer why did they vote for this. And I tell you, 90% of the times because lobbying, money. I'm just tired of these left wing. Every time I go to YouTube, and I'm glad I'm done with this algorithm. But I go every time. There's this one, I don't want to name them because I don't want beef with them, but every time it's like, courts deal fatal blow at Trump today. And then they go, it's like, and then they do all this guy and this other lawyer do all this legal jargon about how this is going to defeat Trump. Then 2 days later, that supposed case, oh no, Trump, there was never an issue. The Supreme Court helped him. So what are we doing? Then all these other ones is like, Congress is in chaos. Bill might not pass. It pass. Come on, guys. Like, all these left-wing media need to start actually getting some of the more progressive voices out there. The old guard needs to be gone. Schumer, Booker, Hakeem Jeffries, gosh, I forgot her name. Anyways, the one that Trump made fun all the time, they call her Pocahontas. I forgot her name. Anyways, we need room for more progressive voices because the establishment Democrats are scared about the New York City phrase. Because if Mamdani wins, that's the blueprint that the Democratic Party needs to go to win the next election. But they're scared because they think that because the established Democrats are Republicans light. And people are tired of it. But with that, I'm going to keep saying, here's one app. If you're a progressive that it wants to make a difference and start getting these politicians uncomfortable, I want you to download the 5 Calls app. I downloaded it, and it makes a good time for knowing what Congress and your senator and your representatives are voting for. The amount of times I call them, I know their staff by name by now. And they're annoyed with me. They're like, oh, this guy again. Don't she learn that Tom Collins is not going to change his mind, or Langford is already bought off? I mean, I don't care, because I'm voting those guys out. Anyways, all that, guys. I'm Luis. That's been the problem with. If you care, this goes to my streamer people and the big YouTube channels. If you care, prove it. All right, good night.